right, these are live pictures out of Washington, D.C., the ellipse, the backdrop of the White House. That's where Vice President Harris will be speaking just moments from now. Our Priscilla Alvarez was saying about 500 yards away from the Oval Office. That'll be the backdrop for her primetime speech to the country tonight, where she will make her case against Donald Trump, speaking from the exact same place where Trump spoke on January 6th before some of his supporters stormed the Capitol. We're going to bring you her speech live. But it does come in the context of new polling, and obviously we don't know what's going to happen, so polling's all we've got right now. This is one of the critical battleground states of Nevada and Arizona. Still really, I mean, look at that. 48, 47, 47, 48, dead heat. Harris, though, has been making some gains compared to the last CNN polls in the Sun Belt states. So on those, that's been an improvement for her. Harry Enton is here now. And Harry, you know, what do you see now versus in those prior polls? And does it show a real Sun Belt path open for Harris, separate from what happens in the upper Midwest?
Yeah, you know, and I'll tell you this much. All we have is the polls right now. I guess the polls on each other, Aaron. Look, I think the bottom line is this. The Kamala Harris campaign, I believe, knows that their best path moves through the Great Lakes. You know, we've been talking about it, right? You get Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. That gets her to 270 electoral votes. But let's say that path starts to fall apart a little bit, right? Let's say we take away the Wolverine state, right? And that drops her down to 255. But if she wins in Nevada and wins in Arizona, then she can still get to 272 electoral votes. So winning Arizona and Nevada leaves that for her. But also, let's just say we turn Pennsylvania red and Wisconsin red. Well, then Trump still is short at 263 because he loses in Nevada and Arizona. And then, of course, there's Georgia and North Carolina. If those go blue as well in the Sun Belt, that would get Kamala Harris to over 270 electoral votes. So the bottom line is this, Aaron. Because Nevada and Arizona are competitive, when you can combine that with Georgia and North Carolina, it leaves a completely alternate path so that Kamala Harris isn't just reliant on the Great Lakes state.
Right. I mean, she has multiple paths, as you point out, and even more so, you know, when you suddenly look at states like North Carolina possibly being in play. Now, the Hispanic vote. Obviously, there's a lot of talk about that, Harry, and it's impossible to just tell from any kind of polling at this instant what the impact of that is. But obviously, the comedian making a joke about Puerto Rico, calling it a floating island of garbage and insulting Latinos in a very graphic sexual context that I have chosen not to play here. But these polls were taken before the rally. So, you know, can you look in there and see any possible ways in which something like those comedians' comments could impact it?
Yeah, I think so, because the bottom line is this. Donald Trump has been doing quite well among Hispanic voters. Kamala Harris has been underperforming with them, especially in those Southwest states. So this is Donald Trump versus the Democrat among Hispanic voters. I took an average of Arizona and Nevada. Last time around, Joe Biden won Hispanic voters in those states by an average of 24 points. Now Kamala Harris is only up by 10 points amongst them. So the bottom line is Kamala Harris has been doing quite well in Arizona and Nevada, despite doing poorly among Latino voters. If any of those Latino movers were moved by those comments from the rally this past weekend, it can only help Kamala Harris even more. So this is something that Donald Trump really doesn't want to occur, because the bottom line, he's been making inroads with Hispanic voters, and any loss among them could put Arizona and Nevada in a Harris's column.
So Esteb was talking about voters who have just been, you know, praying to God they didn't have to deal with the day of voting. Yeah. And now the day has come, whether they're voting early or next week, and they just are putting it off to see how they feel on that day. He was talking about Jake in Minnesota. How is he going to feel on that day? So there are undecided voters out there. As impossible as that may be for some people who are watching to comprehend, they are out there. What are they looking for, Harry?
Yeah, I can't believe there's still undecided voters out there, but the polling tells us that there are. And what do they need to learn more about? Well, they say, clearly the plurality here, 48% say they need to learn more about Kamala Harris, compared to just 36% who say they need to learn more about Donald Trump. So I think it's up to Harris to win over those undecided voters. They've mostly made up their minds about Donald Trump. The question is, can Harris actually convert them and put them in her column? And I think a speech like tonight could go a long way in doing so.
All right, Harry, thank you very much. And I want to go now to Democratic Congressman Stephen Horsford of Nevada, ahead of Harris's speech, because he's co-chair of her campaign and chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus, live from where Harris will be speaking in Washington on that ellipse in just a couple of moments. So, Congressman Horsford, in these final moments before she begins speaking, when you hear Harry talk about the voters of whom 48% say they still need to learn more about Harris, as opposed to 36% who say the same about Trump. Is there anything at this point that you think Harris can say new that would swing those people? Or is it just really a matter of, you know, emotion and the quote unquote feels that they may have on Election Day?
Well, thank you for having me on, Aaron. Look, I know polls are about margin of error, but this election will be won based on a margin of effort. And Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are putting in a full court effort in all of the battlegrounds, including my home state of Nevada. And you can feel it here tonight with the energy and the fact that she's going to talk about a vision for America, how we bring Americans together by building coalitions. She has a to-do list while Donald Trump has an enemies list. Her to-do list includes passing an opportunity economy that will lift up all of Americans, creating economic opportunity to afford to buy a home, to take on corporate gouging, to reduce cost of groceries and childcare, and to protect a woman's fundamental right to make decisions about her body. Those are the messages that I believe we will hear from the Vice President Kamala Harris. The White House is directly behind her.
Yep.
And in 7 days, the American people get to decide who gets to sit behind the resolute desk at the White House.
So Congressman, you know, you hail from Nevada. And that was a state that, you know, had seemed more solidly in Trump territory. Now a total toss-up, according to our latest poll, and Kamala Harris has made progress there. Do you believe she can win Nevada? I mean, do you really believe that she can win it or that she's got it?
We're going to win Nevada because we have a ground game. We have hundreds of volunteers, thousands, in fact, every day on the doors, on the phones, volunteers who are making the effort to make sure that every single vote gets counted, every vote turns out. And Kamala Harris tonight is reaching out to Democrats, to Republicans, to nonpartisans. A third of the electorate in Nevada are nonpartisans, and they will determine the outcome. And I believe Kamala Harris will, in fact, win Nevada and a number of the key battleground states in 7 days.
So I want to ask you, because you're obviously co-chair for a campaign, but you are also chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus, about how Harris has dismissed concerns that black men are not supporting her campaign strongly enough, concerns that, of course, President Barack Obama has voiced. She was on the Breakfast Club radio show earlier this morning, Congressman. Here's what she said about it.
The black men in particular who are at the rallies have recently been saying to me, don't you listen to that, and they got to stop with all that noise. We support you. So I'm glad you raised the topic so we could actually deal with the reality of it versus what some of the media is trying to create as a narrative.
Now, just to be direct and frank here, it's not a media narrative. I mean, Barack Obama's been talking about it. We've seen it in polls. What do you think?
Well, it's not enough to just talk about black men or talk down to black men. It's important to listen to black men. And that's exactly what Vice President Kamala Harris has been doing, not just recently, but really throughout her entire career as Vice President, as United States Senator, as Attorney General. And that is why, after listening to them, she's introduced an agenda that centers the issues that matter to black men. The National Health Equity Initiative to take on sickle cell, diabetes, and prostate cancer, providing forgivable loans for 1 million black entrepreneurs to start and grow a business, to help more black homeowners buy a home, to build equity and wealth. These are the things that black Americans care about, and that's why she's going to win the black male vote, and she's going to win this election in 7 days.
All right, well, Congressman Horsford, I appreciate your time. I know you need to go, and she's obviously about to come out.